On January 1, 2026, a 34-year-old immigrant Muslim Democratic Socialist mayor was sworn in to run the largest city in the United States. When asked by The Nation magazine if this unlikely event might tell us about what is possible in American politics, Mayor Zohran Mamdani said, "The days of us constructing an ever-lowering ceiling of possibility must come to an end. We have to finally usher in an era where the ambition of our vision matches the scale of the crisis in front of us." You'd expect poetry to be part of an event inaugurating such a figure, and that the poem offered for the occasion would be bland, written by a committee, or full of platitudes. But the poem delivered yesterday matched perfectly the tone of a campaign that appears to have been built on mutual respect, vision, human rights, and empathy. Cornelius Eady is that New York City inaugural poet, a poet, playwright, and founder of Cave, a nonprofit organization serving Black poets of various backgrounds, a safe space for intellectual engagement and critical debate. He is a recipient of the 2023 Pegasus Award for Service in Poetry and joins us today via Zoom to talk about inaugural poetry and about his poem, Proof. Cornelius, welcome.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for inviting me.
A delight to have you here. 27 degrees yesterday in New York. Hell hath frozen over.
Yeah, I know. I know. It was perfect that we had that my wife made that joke beforehand, but man, it was cold. I mean, I made the mistake of running out of the house without my gloves on. And man, did I pay for it. It was really cold.
But not as cold as Rochester.
No, no. Well, actually, it was Rochester weather, to tell you the truth. It was it
Yeah,
was it was like a reminder of my youth,
right.
in upstate New York, where this is just called, right. This is just called, this is just called Thursday.
Did you get frostbite when you were a kid?
No, no,
Yeah.
never. What astonishes me because I didn't have my family didn't really have a car. Or if we had cars, we didn't have them for long, and so I walked everywhere, right? Walked everywhere, and just no, never. I mean, and when you're a kid in Rochester, you just take it for granted. It wasn't like I could compare it to someplace else, right? So it's just like, cold is cold, and you have to go, and you walk, and so yeah. I'm still astonished now, um, by all of that, how I survived all of that. When I came to the when I went to the inauguration, I took an Uber over, forgetting that, of course, most of the streets would be blocked off, so they had to let me off about 3 blocks away from City Hall, which is no big deal, except for the fact that it's just finished snowing and the ground was just treacherous with ice, right? And I thought, good God, this is it. I'm gonna slip and fall and break something before I can even read the poem. Right? Right here, it was the most scary 3 blocks I've walked in a long time, and yeah, but people were up for it. I mean, they were really the hang for this. I mean, it was because even with the cold, even with the cold, people were here because it was that moment, right? Everyone knew the moment had arrived, and nothing was going to dampen that.
How'd you get this gig?
Out of the blue, totally out of the blue. I mean, I had no connection to the campaign, and just I get an email, out of the blue from his campaign people, from his team, and the contact person says, the email that the contact person sent me just said, we would really like you to consider writing the inaugural poem. And I was at the for a moment I was a little wary because there's a phishing scam going around online, these days.
That would be creative, wouldn't
No, no,
it?
oh, no, no. Let me tell you how diabolical it is, right? They scrape your material, they scrape your work and material, and then they send you an email basically saying that, I've got this book group, we've read your blah 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 blah, and it goes into detail about the book, right?
Yeah,
So
I've
so
gotten
so
those.
Right, so it really feels as if someone's actually read the book and is contacting this, a human being is contacting you, right?
Right.
Um, and if you fall for it, then we can go into other things down the rabbit hole, right? But so I mean, it was a little wary because I had no connection to the campaign, so I couldn't believe this that somebody would actually be pulling my name out of a hat. Um, but I checked it out, and indeed it was them, and they meant it. So I was really stunned. And I have to tell you, one of the things that um the thing I did that I usually don't do in situations like this is that I usually defer, right? What happens is that someone will give me something like this, and I'll say, I know somebody who's going to be perfect for this because I know all these other poets. We have Kavi Kadam, all these different poets that come from Kavi Kadam, and I just sometimes just go through my Rolex in the head and go, oh, you know what? I know this poet. Yeah, I love. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really flattered, but I know this person is really gonna, who I think really may close a match for what you're up to, and will knock this out of the park, right? And then I stopped myself. And the reason I stopped myself was because I assumed they'd already read some other people, right? And they were really inviting me, and I didn't want to um, insult that gesture. And I also felt that sometimes when the door opens like this, you should walk through the door of fear, just to see what happens. I did that recently when I was the interim director of Poets House, when they were inviting me to fill in the gap between the previous executive director and the new one they've got now. And I just thought, and then I said, you know what, this is a once in a lifetime thing. You got to go through the scary door and just see what happens. And this was another situation. And I just decided you need to go through the scary door. Art sometimes some good art comes out of being uncomfortable. And I really felt I will probably either be really good or I'll really regret it for the rest of my life. But regardless of that, I should walk through the door, and so I
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
That was one of my questions. Did you write this specifically for the occasion? And you already answered that. You wrote it for
Yes,
yesterday.
it is totally for the occasion. I also was a little wary because those kind of poems, inaugural poems, that are occasional poems. That's the official poetic term for them. They usually don't do that well, right? I mean, there's exceptions. I mean, there's Amanda Gorman's poem for Biden, which is really there's Elizabeth Alexander's praise song for the day, which is really good poem. But a lot of times, you don't remember who the poet is and what the poem is, who the poet was, and they don't and they can't please everybody just by definition, right? It's going to be one of the things that someone's nose is going to be out of joint. Someone's going to think it wasn't poetic enough or was too poetic, and then there's the extra layer of the political atmosphere that's connected to this event, right? That it's going to be this new voice, this new energy that is going to be controversial in a lot of ways, right? So I was trying to think of a way of threading that needle. Also that the mayor is incredibly articulate and a great writer in his own right. He's a great writer, and a rapper. Early back in the day, he was a rapper and not a bad rapper. So he can articulate. He knows how to do this. And so it was kind of how I had all those doubts in the head, right? Basically, how am I going to navigate all these different elements to see to come up with something that's going to sound, original, fit the energy and the moment. Um, so those were some of the things. So that was some of the things that was rolling in my head as I was trying to get the poem together. But of course, I just wanted to find something that would simply that would be a compliment to the day.
I watched a couple of different angles of the poem, and as you were talking about trans and queer and people of color, they cut to the outgoing mayor, and I thought, and CBS News specifically did that. So
Did they? I see.
yeah,
Yeah,
you got to
yeah,
see that on CBS
yeah.
News. They cut to him, get the expression. It's kind of stone faced, but it was very interesting that that's when they chose to see his reaction.
Well, that's interesting because, of course, they could have known I was going to say that until I said it, right? I mean, there was nothing. There was there was nothing the teleporter, there was nothing, there was no, there was nothing, when I got there first. They told me, the team told me that the poem was going to be in the teleprompter, and then when I got to the stage, they said, well, no. I said, where's the teleprompter? Is there a teleprompter there? Where's the text? They said, no, no, that's for the politicians.
Oh, excuse me. So let me just read it off my cell phone like the
Well,
kids do.
well, I'm also a musician and sing in a band. So I've learned the hard way to always have a backup, right? Because if someone tells you like this, someone says it's going to be this technically, and then suddenly it isn't there, or it doesn't work. Better have a plan B, and then I have a plan C on top of that. So I had a plan B. Plan B was the phone. Plan C was a printed version in my coat. So I was ready for that.
I
But
wondered.
yeah, but yeah, interesting, because I didn't know the CBS did that. They could have known I was going to say that before I said it. I didn't think about saying it until I was walking out of the green room, to tell you the truth. I was just trying to compare my notes and think what I was going to say before I read the poem. And as I was walking to the podium, I started thinking, you know what, I really should bring up my students, my ex-students from Tennessee, because they're going through a lot right now, in terms of the country in general, and in Tennessee in particular, in terms of the state legislature, and all these laws that they seem to be, cranking out, that basically says you don't have a right to exist. In fact, you're not even there, right? So they're not feeling safe, you know. And like I said, I retired, and I'm now back in New York, but they're on my mind. And I thought that this is something, even though the poem was about New York, I wanted to send up a flare for them, to let them know that I'm thinking of them, and this poem also, has I'm thinking of them not only in just by myself, but also in terms of the poem itself. Yeah, interesting, because I've been hearing different things about reactions to the poem. CBS did this. I heard that both CNN and MS Now both talked through the poem. For them, it was a bathroom break, right? When you go to a rock concert and they play the material and everyone heads for the bathroom. It was kind of like that. And that really it hurts with MS Now, because I'm a loyal, viewer of MS Now, boy. Um, and it's just sort of like, oh, okay, they decided to just talk over the poet, the people who are going for the free speech thing, the democracy thing, and they're over. So I guess the poets don't quite make it in these situations, do
Yeah.
they? But the poem is all over the place right now.
Yeah.
People are just reposting and reposting and everything. So I'm being a little, churlish about it. But
No, no,
but
no, no. Talking during the poem is like the motherfucker who talks during the bass solo. It's the same
yeah, right,
guy.
right. It's the same, right. It's the same concept to me as well. Mose Allison did that great song, right? Your mind's on vacation. Right?
But your mouth is working
Working
overtime.
overtime. Yes, right, right.
Well,
So
that was I wanted to ask you about why you dedicated. Is there a for instance with the queer poets or the trans poets that made it foremost in your mind, or just the general state of?
there's just well there's I don't want to name names, but there's a particular poet that during the spring semester, my last semester there, uh, 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 brilliant queer poet. Just when their work arrives, and it will, it's going to really just stun, I think, in my own opinion, right? As a teacher, I've had some incredible students through the years, but she's really a stunner, and um, she's from Mexico, and it seemed as if she wasn't going to be allowed to stay she got through the MFA program, and she wasn't going to be allowed to stay for the PhD. Um, Very long story, various things was going on, but she spent the spring semester pretty much in hell, trying to make sure that she wasn't going to, and because she's a foreign student. So, and the way things going on with Trump, it seemed very, very clear at least at that moment, that if she couldn't renew someplace. She couldn't be someplace. She was have to go. She was going to have to go back to Mexico, and then, you know, it was not going to be a good thing for them, right? Not, it wasn't going to be good. So I was helping to try to find ways to secure their their status in the country. I felt very, very keenly just how um, perilous this actually is. I mean, it's one thing to talk about it abstractly and say, "Oh, well, I can't," but no, but you know, when you're that person, or you know somebody who's being slowly pushed, feeling they're being slowly pushed to the ledge, right? It's another thing, and so and it's, I mean, that was the most dire example of it, but there was other things going on in Tennessee that semester, and that during the 4 years I was teaching there, that made me think about that, and so I mean, that was part of what was going on. I wanted them to know that I wanted them to also to know that I was still in solidarity with them, and also wanted them to know that um, we're imagining another space, right? And there is another space, and I think that this election is something that sort of indicates that to me, at least. And I just felt like, yes, it can. We're imagining it right now. We're trying to make that space, right? Um,
Like in the Baldwin quote.
like in the Baldwin quote, which is why the Baldwin quote is in there, right? We have to make it. The world where I'm going to fit, I have to make, right? Um, so yes,
Take us through the composition of the poem. I mean, did you knock it out in 20 minutes? Did it take 2 weeks? What was it like?
it took most of the time. I tell you, I was once I said yes to the to the team. I had a phone conversation with the contact person, and we went through a couple of things. And I was taking notes as I was talking. I was thinking, oh, maybe this, maybe that. Maybe I was thinking about what's the flavor, what's the tone, and then I took a look at some of the campaign videos, which are brilliant. Whoever uh, the uh, the video team or the PR team, they are brilliant people. These ads and starts off with starts off on YouTube and Instagram and all these kind of low cost, I guess, ways of putting things together. They're really great guerrilla theater, right? Um, but what I was getting from that was the connection the candidate had with everyday people. I mean, it was just astonishing to see how people just saw themselves in him, right? Saw themselves reflected in him, and just saw that vibe, right? That vibe it resonates through everything I saw, and I took a couple of notes from that, and I wrote a brief, rough draft, and then let it percolate for a bit, um, and then got down to it. I mean, the first line, you have to imagine it, is actually something that Mamdani actually said in a very, I mean, not verbatim, but in a different way. Um, and also the line, this is our time is now is another was another theme of one of the videos, and I incorporated that. This is our time. But the rest of it was sort of like kind of just trying to figure out ways of this person who goes through this goes presents themselves as one of us, right? And the possibility of claiming that space as one of us, as opposed to what's been happening before, right? Change is tricky because you have to imagine. Okay, that's part of it. You have to imagine. You have to imagine that space before you can do the work to claim the space, right? You have to have the courage of imagination to do that. I feel, and I really felt that Mamdani does that for me. The courage of imagining, the courage of claiming that space, of not apologizing for who you are and where you're from, and not saying that that's a sin or a crime or a defect. It's not, you know. So
I'm thinking of Diane de Prima, her poem Rant. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. All other wars are subsumed in it.
no,
Same kind of,
sure.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's that. There's also the spirit of June Jordan, right? I was a friend of June's, and she's one of my favorite poets. And that's way of speaking directly, publicly, with some of the energy I think I was incorporating into the poem. That and Walt Whitman. When we get to the New York part of the poem, I'm basically just dealing with, I'm just sampling, Walt a little, my own way, but using that energy. Because I wanted to have sort of a New York. This is about New York, right? I was also lucky in being able to catch the ear of Elizabeth Alexander, who was the poet who wrote the poem for Obama's first inaugural. We're friends. She was also part of the first faculty of Coffee Con. Her and Athol Weaver, um, and I just like Elizabeth. She said, yes, that's right. Yeah, I know, because I knew she knew what it felt like. I had to reach out to somebody who had gone through this, and she was incredibly supportive, and helpful. She gave me some editing advice that I thought was useful, and actually used and incorporated in putting the poem together.
Fantastic. So much poetry today doesn't heed Ezra Pound's warning to avoid mediocre prose chopped up into line breaks. But your
Oh,
poem passes the test. The use of repetition in it. How are you able to transcend that basic mistake, which seems so rampant in contemporary poetry?
well, I don't know. It's to me, the proof of the poem is it has to sing, right? It's got to sing, and it doesn't mean the same thing for every situation or every subject, but some of the underpinnings of it, right? The superstructure of it, or whatever it is that puts it together, it's got to be lyrical, right? And I'm not a formalist like a lot of people are, but I do insist that it has to be some sort of lyrical lift to the ear. Uh, you got to be able to hear it, and you hear it as song and not as speech, right? But you're right. I was also conscious of the fact that there are some people that are going to be doing some political speech that was going to be cadence and stuff, and stuff like that. So I was also conscious of the fact that I didn't want it to be uh, too much in that zone, because there are going to be a lot of people that are going to do it anyway, right? And better than me, because I'm not a politician, right? I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to swing that way, you know. But I needed to have something that's going to stand on its own, lyrically, and have its own identity lyrically. So that was what I was working for, working towards, and hoping to find something that would indeed do that, and that people would hear as something slightly different than the speeches, right? Right, that they were going to hear.
Not rhetoric, first of all.
No.
Yeah. When Mamdani met with President Trump, I was actually moved by that occasion because he engaged him as another human being, and it said so much about Zoran Mamdani that he was
Yeah.
able to be in that space
Yeah.
after being very critical of the
Yeah.
president. And here they are, just two guys from Queens. And I don't have to get into my politics, but the word caudillo does come to mind. But here he is treating him like a human being, and I think it said so much about the way that this man engages his affairs in a respectful way.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you. And the thing that I loved about that campaign was that you do comparisons of what was going on, especially this year, right? Where it's all tinged with hate, fear. They're coming to get you. They're coming to rape you. They're coming to steal from you. They're coming to do this. They're right next door. Their hands are in your pocket. You know, as opposed to Mondami, who basically just you take a look at those interviews. You take a look at those. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't scream at you. He doesn't, decide to make you feel like crap, right? Or they're trying to decide to make you convince you that you feel like crap, or that you have to dump on somebody to feel better, right? I mean, that's the gift that's his gift. That's his skill. To be able to talk to you and talk to you in such a way that the volume isn't such that he's going to keep triggering you, right? The stuff that he triggers in you is hopeful, right? The stuff that he triggers is sort of like, oh yeah, you know what? I am worth something, you know? Uh,
It can have that effect, but for some people it doesn't, and some people
Well, yeah, you're right. It depends on who the audience and who's listening and who's the audience. I'm totally agreeing with you here,
right.
but but it is unique. I felt it was very unique. You go back because I was listening, I listened to a lot of videos, and I kept waiting for the one who was going to say, well, Adams, he's a dog and he's really, let's just say it what it is. He's a and Cuomo, oh my God, he's a, I mean, right? You gotta keep him out. I mean, he'd make jokes about it. He'd fund them, right? Right? But he wouldn't turn it into, he needs to be, you need to go into his house and drag him out and beat him to death with baseball bats. You know what I mean? It isn't that kind of energy, right? And I really was drawn to that. And I thought I thought that was really unique, and I was really, really drawn to that. And as he's and the proof of this is also the idea of the title, right? This is the proof of how this works, right?
Yeah.
It can work. It does work. There is proof to this. This moment is your proof, right? You don't have to do it the way everybody else does it to
And
get there.
and your tone consistent with the tone of the campaign. It was just a perfect mesh for that. I wonder, the election of Zoran Mamdani as mayor of New York. I mean, we were watching it. We subscribe to the Nation. We've been tracking this. I gave money to Bernie Sanders when he was running as a socialist in Vermont in the 80s, I think it was.
Yeah.
But what does this occasion portend for a country in a time literally of domestic federal terror? What does it
Yeah.
mean for the country?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's one of those things where you can see how inarticulate I'm becoming, right? Because it's just so massive that this last year has been such a disaster on so many levels. You have to be, I mean, we're basically losing the what we thought the United States of America was, to tell you the truth. And this is why I thought this is why this was so important, why this election was so important to me, and to a lot of us. I mean, it just basically we have to have something to counterbalance this. Um, and the idea that um, some people really want this, right? They really think that this is the way the country should be going, and this is the better country, right? Um, and of course, it's a recipe for disaster. It goes nowhere, you know. Um, and it actually cuts their own throats. As somebody was saying about healthcare, hey, Republicans get cancer too, right? So if you're cutting funding and research, right, in places where because you think you're sticking it to the blue states, right? You're going to find out that yourself or your wife or your kid is suddenly going to be in that peril because you thought it was going to be this door where basically you can shut yourself behind and everyone else on the other side of the door gets it and you don't for some reason. The level of denial and fantasy, I think, that magical thinking, that dangerously magical thinking of thinking that somehow you can um, uh, draw down the lightning on everyone but yourself. It's really gonna do us all in, and it's really upsetting. And so yes, I'm again, but I don't. But again, as bad as it's getting, again, I just think that the the campaign in the win, and even the campaign in the win was significant because again, it was pointing out it doesn't have to go that way. It doesn't have to go that way, and we don't have to tear each other to pieces in order to do that. I mean, I worry about the attention this is going to draw from that other side of the country. Um, but I think that he's ready for this. I think he knows that, right? And I think he's ready for that. Now, the directions these things are going to go in, who can tell, right? You can't predict all of this, but I think he's as much as anybody can be, he's ready for this.
When you say he's ready, do you believe he's ready in a king-like manner?
No, 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 no,
I
no.
mean, Martin Luther King.
Oh, not a
He,
monarch. Yeah, yeah.
Dr. King knew he on some level, it seems to me, he knew his days were numbered, and he was committed to his cause and knew what some of the possibilities were, and one of those possibilities, the worst of them, manifested. Do you see Mamdani as that kind of a figure?
I think he's committed. I do. I don't want to speak for him, but from my point of view, yes, he's totally committed to what he's doing and the way he's doing it. Um, and I just and again, I think it's something that infects everybody else in a way that it energizes people to do the same. Um, Now, again, I can't I can't predict I mean, who would believe that after you had a president that basically tried to shut down the United States government, had a riot to try to break down to just basically stop the wheels of government to actually kind of actually assassinate Congress, uh, that you invite him back, that you vote him back in, right? I mean, you know, I can't believe we did this to ourselves, right? That the voters did this to themselves, to say, oh yes, rather than taking a chance with a black woman, we'll bring the boogeyman back, you know, and live with that. And then suddenly you realize, oh, I'm living with a boogeyman. Oh my God, he's a boogeyman. I didn't think he was going. It's so anything is possible, right? That's all I'm trying to bring up here is that I can't imagine. It beggars the imagination. Anything is possible. So I don't know what direction it's going to go, but I do know there's going to be a resistance to it, and I do know that the resistance is going to be really well considered.
What advice do you have for someone who has to write an inaugural poem?
Call Elizabeth Alexander.
Yeah, sure. Give us her cell phone number while
I
you're at
won't. I won't. I won't. But really, just to sort of like figure out just where you want to land, where you want that poem to land, right? It's a narrow thing you want to needle you need to thread, right?
How can you know how it's going to land?
You don't know. You don't know. I am relieved that the poem seems to be being responded to so well that and like I was telling my friends, the poem did its. I feel like seems like the poem did its job. That the expectation or the hunch I had for putting the poem together seemed to be the right ones. But you never know. I mean, there's always that famous story of Robert Frost, of course, when he wrote his inaugural poem for the Kennedys. Um, and he couldn't read it because it was a cold January. The sun was very bright and the wind was very strong, and he couldn't hold on to the paper, or the paper flew away, something like that. And so he had to rely on his memory to do a poem he knew by heart, was the gift outright. Now, I don't never say Frost is one of my foundation poets when I was a teenager reading, in high school. And I have nothing bad to say about the man. But if you want to see a bad Robert Frost poem, go online and look up the poem he actually was going to read. Nah, no, no. But that's what it was. He fell in the same. I mean, it was the same thing, right? He couldn't. He didn't. It was like it was gonna be a snooze, right? Um, but and I'm saying that jokingly. I'm not saying that critically or badly or against Frost. I'm saying that poem, that particular poem, you know, couldn't figure it out either, right? And it's really hard to figure that out. It's a mixed blessing being asked, right? Um, I feel blessed that I was invited, and it is one of the greatest sort of honors I'm going to get in this poor poet's life, and I know it. So, but I also know that there's a lot of that there is a it's kind of a landmine. kind of, to sort of figure the thread your way through it, to figure out a way that's going to do something that will be a poem at the end of getting through that field. At the end of the field is, instead of blowing yourself up, you hopefully there's a poem that stands as a poem, right? But also is connected to that moment, right? So it's a tricky dance, tricky dance.
May the courage of your actions in accepting this task and nailing it in such a way continue to serve you throughout the rest of your life. I'm honored to be able to talk to you about this on such short notice. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and I love what you've done for the poetry community. And Cave Canem, if that's all you did, that would be something that the generations would remember. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your work and what you've done, and continued success and happiness, and happy Year of the Horse.
Back at you, Paul. Thank you so much for contacting me. It's great to talk to you.